Most actors are terrified of doing monologues. But if you're watching this video, there's probably one looming on your horizon. After learning these 5 keys, you'll find it doesn't have to be an excruciating rite of passage. It can be a wonderful chance for you to bare your soul in front of an audience, which is what we signed up for with acting anyway, right? I'm Brian Bounds, and I'm one of those real weirdos who loves monologues, so much so that my MFA acting thesis was a 2-hour monologue, and I wrote an award-winning solo drama and toured it globally. So I put together this workshop so that I could teach you the tools that you could use to climb your own monologue mountain step by step. I'm about to throw a lot of techniques at you, so look for the downloadable guide on the NeuroActing website. It contains all these nuggets that I'm about to share with you. Step 1, choosing the monologue. You're going to put a lot of your time into this, so let's do it right. Choose a monologue that will fit your personality and your type. It's kind of hard to be objective, so I always ask my students to take an online Myers-Briggs personality test. I find that this helps me to choose the right monologues for them, and it will mean that the monologue you choose will have your own voice. The more the character fits your innate personality, the more your audience will go along for the ride. Another bit of advice, stay roughly within your age range. If you're 16 years old, don't choose a monologue for a 60-year-old. Playwrights always write these different ages in different voices, so it needs to be something that you'd be reasonably cast in. This way you will draw the audience in, otherwise you'll alienate them. Lady Macbeth doesn't look old enough to have had a baby to dash the brains out. But ultimately, the monologue that's perfect for you is one that gives you a buzz.
Wherefore should I stand in the plague of custom?
And makes you feel that you can't wait to go on that roller coaster ride with your character. What else? Beware of monologues that tell stories or that seem like diary entries. It may be a wonderful, funny story, but it's almost like reading out the recipe for a cake. We don't want to hear the recipe. We want the experience of eating the cake. Put it another way, your job as an actor is not to report on a situation. Your job is to be actively involved in the events, not just commenting on them. Step 2, preparing the monologue. So, you have your monologue. Now begins the slog of learning it. But first, do your homework, and then memorizing and performing it will be so much easier. First, try to read the whole script a few times so that you can really understand this slice from your character's life. They didn't just parachute into this moment. Something big is going on. So brainstorm that. What's going on? What just happened? And what surrounds you? Decorate your fourth wall with people, furniture, forests, clouds, whatever. For my name is Bill. The scene is a hotel lobby, so I visualize the hotel reception desk, the bar, the windows, other people, potted plants, everything. If you don't create these circumstances, you'll fall into 2 big traps. One is playing the mood, which is a generalized wash of dramatic feelings that the viewer will turn off of after a few moments. If you know the circumstances, you don't have to play the mood. The second trap is deciding to stare 1 foot above your audience's head. If you know what's around you, you can use those objects to anchor your imagination. A monologue generally occurs during a climactic moment for a character. Your character is probably being more open, honest, and raw here than at any other point in the play. What does that say about your relationship to the person you're speaking to? It says that you, the actor, must know specifically who you're talking to. Who are they? What's your relationship to them at this very moment? And most importantly, what do you need from them at this very moment? There must be something hugely at stake with your relationship with this other person. Make it as specific as possible, because this relationship and this scene partner will be another anchor for you while you're performing it. This preparation stage is also how you're going to prevent yourself from sabotaging your own performance once you get out on stage and the adrenaline takes over. We all know what that feels like, don't we? It's like you're holding on to the leash of this huge dog and it's pulling you along helplessly. You need to be in control of your performance. The structure you need to put in place, I call an acting score. Just like a musician in a concert would play a music score. Only your score is going to include dramatic signposts to help you with the journey of going from A to Z in the monologue. Leave that part out, and your limbic system, I teach you about that in NeuroActing, it'll drive you urgently to get through the piece because it just feels right. Here's my experience, though, in casting actors. The people you're performing this piece for want to see you actually thinking so that they can actually follow you. If you're not thinking, they'll switch off because you're delivering a nervous, one-note performance which is uncomfortable for them to watch. Look at it from the director's perspective. If your character has not changed from the beginning to the end of the piece, then there's no need for you to open up your mouth to begin with. We cover the fine art of creating a score on the NeuroActing Master Course, but for this lesson, you're going to be getting a drink of water out of a fire hose. First, you're going to look for the event of the scene. That's the little slice of life in your character's story that this monologue represents. Write the event at the top of the script so that you're always reminded of the journey that you're about to take before you dive into it. Next, decide on your objective and write that objective below the event. Now, who's going to help you meet your objective? Your scene partner. Put it all on them. Then you can throw yourself into getting what you want. These are your actions. We spent an entire lesson on the Master Course defining exactly what an action is so that you can choose one that's playable and not too analytical. You definitely don't want to be in your head while you're acting. So a clearly defined action is one that you can really put your weight into. All of those elements combined together, event, objective, obstacle, action, and beat changes where they occur, those are the notes in your acting score. Finally, in your preparation, try to find the naked moment in your monologue. That's from my acting teacher, Lee Abraham. Ask yourself, where do you really let the mask fall? Where do you let down your guard and become the vulnerable person who you really are, but that you've been covering up until this point? That naked moment is why this monologue was probably written in the first place. Once you establish that, then think of how you're going to start from the beginning and build to that naked moment. Step 3, learning the monologue. In graduate school, I once had to learn the role of the Duke in Measure for Measure. That's the 5th largest role in Shakespeare, and I had to do it while taking classes during the day and rehearsing or performing in the afternoons or evenings. There's no way around it. Learning lines is a slog. But here's what helped me. Now that you've scored the scene, you will now know perfectly well why you're saying what you're saying. That makes learning the words much easier. But here's some helpful hints. If you want to learn something more quickly, learn it slowly. What? Neuroscientists tell us that when we learn something new, if we take it slowly, then it gets the brain's attention much more effectively, and we can then lay down the new neural pathways quicker, in this case, our lines. So fight the urge to gobble up the lines. Take it easy while you put them into your head. Try to work on it 45 minutes on and 15 minutes off. Learn the big speeches one sentence at a time, or you'll overwhelm your mind. So learn the first sentence, then run that sentence into the second sentence, then run those two and add the third sentence, etc. An even faster way? Learn your last sentence or beat first. Get it so that it's comfortable, then add the line before that, and then plow into the line that you just learned. You'll find that you learn the piece much quicker this way because your brain will be pulled along by the momentum of the piece rather than trying to hack your way through a jungle of text. As you learn the lines, do not get stuck into line readings, even though you think a certain way of saying lines is correct, and it might even get you a big laugh later on. Always read over your lines the last thing before you go to sleep. It'll help lock them in. When do you know your lines well enough? You need to know your lines so well that there's no way you could say anything but these lines. No little added words, no pauses as you search for the thoughts. You got to know those words so well that you can speed through them without thinking. Because in your acting, you mustn't be searching for your words. You must be focused on what's happening. I tell my students to get a peeler and work their way through a carrot while going through the words. Only then will you be able to start acting. So, you know your lines completely. How do you begin to wrestle with it? Before running it, close your eyes and remind yourself of your circumstances, your environment. Think of getting a photo of someone you might be talking to. Imagine that you need something from them. Imagine that you can be hurt by them if you don't get what you need from them. Then run it. If you're stumped for an idea of whom you're talking to, I always make them the one who knows what it's like to be me, who accepts me, and is my champion as I try to get through this tough time. What about soliloquies, where you're supposedly talking to yourself? Well, I'll admit there are moments in my life in deep frustration where I find myself verbalizing to someone or something who isn't there. You may have done the same thing. It's natural and it's normal. And that's what's happening in a soliloquy. What I do then is picture taking my mind, myself, from my head and placing it out there and then wrestling with it, reasoning with it, pleading with it. It's certainly more helpful than looking into a sea of faces staring at me. And they, out there, will identify, because young or old, we've all had these imaginary friends. Your text is your greatest enemy, according to the great acting teacher Sanford Meisner. What do you mean by that? You need to get the text out of your head and into your body. And how do you do that? Stop listening to yourself as you act. Move it around. Say it while doing something physical that requires your full concentration. Your body will show you how to do the monologue. It'll surprise you with ideas, reactions, feelings, discoveries. Here's an interesting tidbit. This thing that we call a play, it's rumored that it came from the Middle Dutch word Pleyen, which means to rejoice and be glad. So keep that attitude, that sense of play when you rehearse, and tap into your playful nature. Even if it needs to have a serious tone, you'll give it much more variety, and you'll be approaching what Stella Adler said. The play has nothing to do with words. You do not act words. You act with your soul. But always keep it fresh. Always throw out your last rehearsal and approach your next run-through as if these thoughts are coming to you for the first time. Let me ask you this. Does your character know that they're about to start a monologue? Of course not. I got one important thing to get off my chest. And that reminds me of something else. And that leads to another thing that you need to hear. And then I'm on a roll. So work to make all of your moments surprising so that both you and the audience are knocked out of their comfort zone. Step 5, performing the monologue. Now's the moment. It's time to perform this piece. If you're not entirely ready, then it's like you're all alone in the universe, floating in space. No earth beneath your feet, lonely and terrifying. But not for you anymore, because you know the score, your acting score. So now you play it. The moment before you begin, you remind yourself what is the event of the story, what this piece is about. Then in the nanoseconds before you start, you take stock of how your character changes during the course of it. You remind yourself of what just happened to your character to bring you into this current state of mind and to make you have this huge desire to get something from the other character. Then you have the courage to flip on a little switch in your mind that says, I have no idea what I'm about to say. And then you intentionally forget what you're about to say. You look into the eyes of your imaginary scene partner and you fight for what you need. You don't manipulate the audience. You don't force any emotions that aren't there. You simply fight for what you need with every ounce of your energy. You play the score. You move from action to action. And the score will help you create the emotions. And whatever happens then is perfection. Because whatever happened to you came out of a natural, realistic event experienced by a human being who was struggling for what they wanted and didn't care what the rest of the world thought of them. That's what the audience is dying to see. It takes guts to work this way, but I know you've got those guts. I hope this helped you. We've only scratched the surface of acting and scoring a scene. The master course covers it all. But for now, you can download the notes for this workshop from the NeuroActing website and then use them with your monologue. I hope this helps you. So have fun climbing that mountain and break a leg. I don't know if that phrase works with climbing mountains, but break a leg anyway.